Hey everybody, so I thought it was about time I try my hand at military history, and where's a better place to start than the battle that made me fall in love with military strategy? As it happens, this is not only my first love when it comes to strokes of brilliance on the battlefield, but also one of the most well-known. It is, in my view, the anyway here's Wonderwall of military history. It is the Battle of Cannae, and it's a good one. The lesson to take from this battle is know your enemy. Hannibal was great at that. The backstory for this one goes all the way back one war prior to the First Punic War. In this war, Rome had a large influence on the Italian peninsula, but not enough to challenge a superpower like Carthage. Or so it was thought. Rome challenged the superpower of Carthage for control of Sicily, and they won. During that war, one of the Carthaginian military leaders was a guy named Hamilcar Barca. Hamilcar famously took his young son and made him swear an oath never to be a friend to Rome. This son was Hannibal. By the time the Second Punic War came around, once again Carthage and Rome fighting for control of the Mediterranean, Hannibal was ready to lead an army for Carthage. He took an army of war elephants and North African soldiers across the Strait of Gibraltar, recruited some more soldiers from Spain and the Gallic regions, took the elephants through the Alps mountain range, and successfully launched a land invasion of the Italian peninsula from the north. That trip across the mountains is one of the reasons people still remember him. The other is how well he did in open battles. The Romans tried and tried again to crush his army into battle, and they just couldn't do it. One of those attempts was in 216 BC at a place called Cannae. Now, Hannibal had won a few battles already against the Romans, and his one army had depleted multiple Roman armies and humiliated multiple Roman generals. At this point, the more long-term thinkers in the Roman government realized they weren't going to beat Hannibal on the battlefield, so they needed to starve him out, attack his supply lines, start skirmishes rather than huge battles. But their opponents, still in control, refused to accept victory without glory. So they gathered all the resources and soldiers that the Roman Republic could scrounge up, and they collected an army of between 50,000 and 70,000 troops to go up against the undisciplined, poorly equipped cocktail of between 40,000 and 50,000 soldiers from different parts of the world and speaking different languages. The reason the Roman army lost was that they felt overconfident in their numerical advantage. Their strategy was simple: infantry advance, infantry crush, battle win. This was exactly the attitude Hannibal knew they would take, and he planned for it. The night before the battle, the Carthaginian army had their light infantry in front, heavy in back, and cavalry on the wings. The morning of, they were switched, and the infantry in the front was arranged in a convex semicircle. Only there was a trick involved. He told his infantry in the center to give up ground when the Romans came in, and he told his infantry on the flanks to hold their ground and not to give them an inch. When the Roman infantry came charging in like a stampeding bull, they saw that they were taking ground in the center, and they thought they were winning. So they kept on charging, right into a trap. They were facing a curved line of infantry in the front, partially surrounded by them. Hannibal's light infantry that he was keeping in the back had come around to the sides to hit the Roman flanks, and the cavalry, which happened to have driven off the Roman cavalry, slammed into the back of the Roman infantry. They were completely and perfectly trapped. Some accounts say that they were condensed so tightly from all sides, they didn't even have room to lift a sword. It's estimated that Rome lost 20% of its fighting-age men in that single day. 14,000 Romans escaped, 10,000 were taken prisoner, and the rest died in that bloody circle of death. The Romans would pay back Carthage for that, though, in a generation or two. Now, certain people who are excited about a certain show returning last week may have had a déjà vu feeling when I talked about an army packed so tightly surrounded by an enemy army that they didn't have room to move their arms or use their weapons. That show is Game of Thrones, and the fight I'm talking about is the Battle of the Bastards. Since there are some pretty obvious similarities between the Battle of the Bastards and the Battle of Cannae, I thought I'd make some battle maps of this fictional battle to show them to you. If you care about spoilers, you may click away now. Ready? I'll give you 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's get started. So Jon Snow is attacking Winterfell, held by Ramsay Bolton. He has an army of about 2,000 wildlings.
How many do you have that can march and fight? 2,000.
And 500 or less northern soldiers from the allied houses.
200 Hornwoods, 143 Masons.
62 Mormonts.
It's not what we hoped for.
And, of course, one giant. From the battle scenes, I'll estimate about 500 of the wildlings were fighting as archers, and the rest were fighting as infantry. I specifically say infantry and not cavalry because I've noticed something. The only horses I remember ever seeing north of the wall were either the dead horses the White Walkers were using, or horses that belonged to the Night's Watch. I will take the liberty of an educated guess and say that most wildlings don't know how to properly ride a horse, let alone fight on one. So that's why I'm saying the cavalry in Jon's army come from the northern houses that support him, not from the wildlings. In all, less than 500. Ramsay's army is a bit harder to decipher the makeup of, because while it's mentioned in a couple places that the total number is between 5,000 and 6,000, there are fewer clues to how many of them were archers, cavalry, light or heavy infantry. All the numbers I'm about to give are just me looking back at the scenes from the episode and trying my best to guess. So the first group of Bolton troops we see in action are the archers. I will guess there's about 1,000 of those. The first cavalry charge that Bolton sends, I didn't get a good look at how many there could be, but I'm gonna say maybe 1,000. After that first cavalry charge, there's a shot that gives us a view of Bolton's archers again, and standing behind the archers are a lot of men on horses. I will guess that Bolton has at least 2,000 cavalry in reserve. The specialty heavy shield phalanx infantry probably number between 500 and 750, and the infantry that Small John Umber leads into battle probably number between 750 and 1,000. Great, so we have about 3,000 cavalry, 1,000 archers, and about 1,500 infantry. That all adds up to about 5,500 total Bolton soldiers. So just to be clear, here's what my math looks like. Jon Snow has quite a battle ahead of him. So to put that into perspective, here's what we start with. The Boltons have quite a few more troops than Snow's army, and it was also mentioned that Snow's army was digging trenches along the sides to prevent the Bolton cavalry from doing a flank attack. So you can see why the plan was to draw them into a frontal charge. That way they could kind of bottle them up at least a little bit, and the archers would be more useful than not at all. However, that draw them in strategy did not work because Jon Snow rode out to save his brother Rickon because of Ramsay's little game with that. And after Rickon died, Jon Snow charged the Bolton army by himself, and Davos, trying to save Jon, ordered a cavalry charge. Which brings us to part 2 of the battle map. Both sides do a cavalry charge, and Jon Snow's army also has their infantry charge. However, infantry go slower than cavalry, so by the time they get there, I believe the Bolton cavalry already had a chance to surround Snow's cavalry. And all those dead horses, I believe that explains the big wall of dead bodies that we see later in the scene. And because of that, I believe the battle map would have shaped out to look something like this, which when the archers charged would have turned into something like this. And then, of course, so here's how that went. If the Knights of the Vale had not shown up, Jon Snow would be dead and Ramsay would still have about 4,000 troops in his army. So just how many Knights of the Vale were there? Well, I don't know exactly, but before Robb Stark's entire army died, they had tens of thousands. So I imagine the Knights of the Vale had something comparable to that number. So in other words, Littlefinger's army is probably bigger than anything the Lannisters can put on the field. It's probably as big as anything the Tyrells can put on the field. It's probably as big or bigger than anything Dorne can put on the field. And it's probably bigger than Daenerys' army, except Daenerys has dragons. So as we get on with the show, enjoy that thought. Enjoy the new season. I know I'll enjoy it. See you later.